Are you trying to work out which film camera to buy? Well, I've got you covered. There are hundreds and hundreds of different film cameras, and when you're trying to work out which one to get, it can just be a complete mess. I'm going to keep things simple, so I'm only going to show you a few. But I'm sure you helpful people in the comments will show me how something else is the best camera ever. So whether you want to be the next big thing or you just want to take pictures for fun, I'm going to show you what the best cameras are to buy in 2024. A little later on in the video, I'm going to talk about some rare cameras, but first off, I'm going to talk about point and shoots. If you want to catch cool pictures of your mates or your holidays or things like that, then these are the ideal cameras for you. I'm going to show you 3 different options for 3 different budgets. First off, we've got the budget option, the Kodak H35N. This is about £60. Now I know that there are loads of different point and shoots that you can get at this price point, and if you want to do that, be my guest. But the reason I wanted to put this in is because it's a half frame camera, it doesn't cost that much, and it's really simple to use. It's got a 22mm f8 lens and 1/100th of a second shutter speed. It's really basic, you're not going to be getting any incredible pictures, but it's a great option and it will save you a ton of money because it's a half frame camera, so you basically get double the amount of shots than you would in a normal camera. For our middle ground option, we've got the Olympus Mu 2. Most people know about this camera, it's really popular and there's still thousands and thousands of them around. This is coming in at about £250, maybe a bit more sometimes depending on where you buy it from. The Mu 2 has a 35mm 2.8 lens which is super sharp, and the focusing on this camera is what makes it so popular. It very rarely misses focus, and to be honest, it's just a really ideal point and shoot. It's also really weatherproof and really small as well. Perhaps it shouldn't be this expensive, but you can say that about any film camera really. But when you buy these film cameras, generally they'll retain or even go up in value. So you can buy it, sell it on, move on to a different camera. For the top tier, I'm going for the Minolta TC1, which is probably about £800 or more. It's insanely small, it's got a 28mm 3.5 lens, and once again, it's so sharp and the focusing is amazing. I really like these rare point and shoots, and the TC1 is the kind of camera that you'd probably have to import from Japan. As good as it is, and it is great, it's still not going to be as good as an SLR camera. But if you really want to push the boat out, you can go for something like the Pentax T2 or the Nikon 35Ti or something like that. Stepping it up a gear, we've got SLRs and rangefinders. SLRs are single lens reflex cameras, so when you look through the viewfinder, you're basically seeing what the lens sees. This is what the picture will be. On a rangefinder, it's a little bit different and the focusing is a little bit different too, but they're both really high quality cameras that professionals have used throughout the years. So I'm going to start with my favorite budget SLR camera, and that's got to be the Pentax ME Super. This comes in at about £70 to £100, depends if you're lucky or not, to be honest, but the ME Super is an aperture priority camera. You can shoot it in manual, but you would generally shoot it in aperture priority. This means it's a lot easier to use than some of the other fully mechanical cameras, and it means that you can get some really good pictures without having to think quite so much about it. You can get the 50mm 1.7 lens at a pretty reasonable price, and you can get some really sharp pictures, and it's a big step up from point and shoots for sure. In the middle ground, I'm going to have to go for the Nikon FM2, purely because I love this camera so much and I use it all the time. The FM2 used to be known as the professional's backup camera because it could pretty much work in any conditions. It's pretty much indestructible, it's fully mechanical other than the light meter, and you can put some amazing lenses into it as well. The Nikon 50mm 1.8 lens with the bunny ears is amazing, and a lot of the other lenses are also really good too. But let's talk about if you're looking to break the bank. This is where I'm going to talk about 2 cameras and our first rangefinder, the Pentax G2 and the Nikon F6. The G2 is about £2,000 and the F6 is probably about £1,200. Now I know I'm talking about another Nikon yet again, but the F6 is arguably the best SLR camera ever made. The f6 is almost like the crossover between digital and film. It has auto everything if you want it to, or you can shoot it fully manually if you want it to as well. You can fit a lot of the Nikon F-mount lenses on it and have autofocus and super sharp pictures, and the metering system on it is just out of this world. When I get some money together, I'm definitely going to try and invest in a Nikon F6 because it's just so good. The Pentax G2 is a very different camera. It's a rangefinder, so the focusing is a bit different, but it's all auto anyway, as long as you want to shoot it on auto. Auto focus, auto exposure, auto everything. It looks crazy. It looks like it is worth $2,000. It's used by some really big photographers to this day, and I've used the G1 and I thought it was very good, but the focusing isn't that good. And the G2 apparently makes up for all that focusing issue. The G2 pretty much has some of the best lenses ever made, which are the Zeiss lenses that fit the G system, and they can create some of the sharpest images that you could ever wish to make. And they look amazing too. That really is if you've got like so much budget that you don't know what to do with it. And to be honest, I didn't enjoy shooting the G1 because I like to have a little bit more control over my focusing, and it's quite difficult to shoot that as a manual focus camera. That's it for SLRs and rangefinders. Of course, there are so many more that I'm sure everyone has all their own preferences, and someone's going to be like, oh, this is the best one. And that's just how it is. I can't fit all of those cameras into one video. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, you should definitely drop me subscribe. Every time someone does subscribe, I call my mum and I tell her. Okay, so we're talking about the big guns. Medium format cameras. These cameras can create some of the sharpest images with the most detail possible. So they're amazing for things like portrait and landscape photography. I'm only going to suggest 2 cameras here because I don't really think there's any point in talking about a budget version of a medium format camera. If you're buying a medium format camera, then you know what you're getting into. First up, we've got the Mamiya RB67, which will set you back about 600 quid. Now, I know, yes, there's the RZ67, but for the most part, you could probably use the RB67 and you'd be just fine. This camera has some incredibly sharp Secor lenses, which really do produce some of the most amazing pictures. Obviously, that's also down to the fact that it's a medium format camera. You get a lot more detail because the negatives are much bigger. It's really cool that the Mamiya has a rotating back, so you can effectively go from landscape to portrait by just rotating the back. This is probably mainly down to the fact that the camera is kind of just made to be used on a tripod. It's not really a handheld camera per se. You can use it handheld, it's just not overly easy because the viewfinder is rotated, so it's not like normal when you're looking for the viewfinder, it's all opposite. My biggest positive with the RB67 is that it can focus incredibly close with the bellows focusing. So you can sort of twist the bellows until they focus to the degree that you want them to, as close or as far away as you like. Its size and weight is probably what lets it down. That's probably one of the big reasons that I stopped shooting with cameras like this, or couldn't afford to keep cameras like this, is just because you think, well, taking them out is a really big hassle. And that brings me on to one of my favorite cameras that I've ever shot with, and that is the Pentax 6.7. I had the Pentax 6.7 for about a year and I absolutely loved it. It is very, very, very heavy. It's gigantic. It's like a mega SLR in a way. It'll probably set you back like 1,800 quid, $2,000, something like that. It is an expensive camera, but God, it gets some phenomenal pictures. Once again, it has some amazing lenses that are incredibly sharp. You get a lot of detail as you do with the RB67. It's a bit easier to use than the RB67. It's a bit more accessible in a way for a medium format camera, and it's probably about the same weight, if not heavier. The only thing that really let the Pentax 6.7 down, and was the reason why I sold it, is that the maximum or minimum focusing distance was 1 meter. So I couldn't get any closer than 1 meter with the 90mm lens that I had. And with the RB67, you could get incredibly close, get very intimate portraits. Okay, so that's kind of that. Obviously, there are so many different film cameras that you could use, and I wouldn't blame you for spending longer on trying to work out which one to get. It's not always as simple as like, you should just get this camera. Sometimes it depends on what kind of thing you want to photograph, what kind of style you have, what you want from your photography, and whether you just want it to be casual or you want to learn and get better. But I hope those have been really helpful to you and given you a little bit of an idea of what sort of camera you should be looking at. If you want to learn more about film photography and cameras and all kinds of things, then you should definitely take a look at my channel and watch the next video coming right up somewhere here.